All throughout childhood, my main symptom was a cough. I would wake up with a cough until about 11 o'clock until I was like up and moving. So mornings were always just terrible for me. That cough is what I think kept me like fighting for answers, I guess. I was constantly like sick with what my doctor thought was strep. At least 4 or 5 times a year, I was at the doctor's office, like antibiotic after antibiotic after antibiotic, and really was just sent on my way because I looked so normal and because I was so athletic and because I was doing everything I wanted to do. Nobody took a second thought.
Hi there, I'm Emily Schaller, and you're watching the Roxy F. Boltcast. Before we get started, there's a few things we need to go over. First off, nothing on this podcast should be considered medical advice. Medical advice should only come from your doctor. Views expressed on this podcast are solely opinions of the guest and not necessarily opinions of myself or the Roxy F Foundation. Enjoy this episode of the Roxy F Boltcast. This episode of the Roxy F Boltcast is sponsored by Vertex.
Hi, my name is Skyler Petty. I am 24 years old and I was diagnosed with CF in August of 2022 at the age of 23 years old. They started me on like your typical allergy medications. They thought maybe, okay, sports-induced asthma with soccer. Here's an inhaler, send you on your way again. I don't feel as if like I maybe got blown off. I feel as if there's just no like deeper investigation. And when I started scheduling my college classes around my cough, I was like, I can't have morning classes, or knowing if I'm gonna have a morning class, I'm gonna have mediocre grades because I just couldn't focus fully. Realizing that is when I did some real reevaluating of, okay, this definitely is not correct. This is not normal. This is not allergies. This is not just asthma. Like there's something deeper going on here. And it wasn't for lack of trying from my parents. Like they took me to the doctor. They did what they were supposed to do. It just wasn't, like I said, a deeper investigation. So in August of 2021, I went back to the ENT and allergist, got testing again. They found out that I had chronic pansinusitis, and they said, let's do sinus surgery. Had my sinus surgery in August of 2021. Results didn't stick. It all came back with a vengeance. Summer 2022, they said, let's do some immunology testing. The immunologist ruled out so many things, and he was the one that said, let's rule out CF just to see. I'm so grateful he did, and obviously that time in my life where he said the word cystic fibrosis, I was just so, I don't know, taken aback. I sat in the doctor's office and cried. I got in my car and I Googled it and cried. And I'm like, oh great, Google says I'm in my midlife crisis now, like at 23.
Did you know about cystic fibrosis?
When I was little, I had a neighbor named Mariah who played with my older sisters because they're 10 and 8 years older than me. I was little, but she had cystic fibrosis and she had a very, very, very severe case of it. I think that's what caught me off guard, and I think that's what caught my family off guard, is that I don't look like a Mariah, if that makes sense. You know, she was taking handfuls of enzymes and just coughing all the time and just so sickly ill. And I didn't look like that picture, like that wasn't me. So I think that's why my family still probably struggles with thinking that I have CF, because I just don't look like that case.
Wow, okay, so I'm not a doctor, but if I know chronic cough and then I see sinusitis and having a sinus surgery and then it coming back, I'm like, that's CF right off the rip.
Yeah.
So how did that diagnosis then get started? Sweat testing, genetic testing, and I'm also curious, you're at the age where they maybe should have had newborn screening when you were born?
I am not sure how I slipped through the cracks. I don't know if it was like nationally required for CF testing in '99. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. But regardless, I did slip through the cracks. Here I am. Once the immunologist said, let's rule out CF, I did sweat testing at my work, actually. I work at the Children's Hospital here in Cincinnati, and they don't offer sweat testing anywhere else around the area. It's just at the Children's Hospital. So before I clock in, I had to go to the lab and go sit for an hour and a half and get sweat tested and then go clock in. And I was like, man, this is not your stereotypical story.
Yeah.
So sweat test came back indeterminate. Genetic testing obviously came back positive. They found the 2, but I had to get retested with a sweat test. So 2 sweat tests, then my genetic testing. And then I read my chart before my doctor called me and it said, you're positive. And I was like, oh, great, here we go.
Did you see the immunologist, or were you
The immunologist, once he called me, he said, I'm gonna get you in with University of Cincinnati. So they referred everything over to Cincinnati for their ENT to do a revision surgery for my sinus surgery, and then to get me in with the CF care team there.
Wow. What were you told? And like I guess we can talk about what treatments you started and what your prognosis was. What did they say that was going to be like?
My first appointment with my CF doctor, I took my mom because who doesn't need their mom still at 23? And she had note card after note card after note card of questions, as a mom does. And I appreciate that because I think I had blinders on the entire time just of maybe a traumatic experience. So I feel like that was normal, and I appreciate her being there with her note cards of questions. It was scary, I will say, to say the least, that this is a whole new world, a whole new environment, a whole new experience, and I was so unprepared, I think, to hear all of the things that the CF doctor was gonna go through, like each body system, how it looks like, medication options. It was so overwhelming, I think.
Yeah.
They were so great about it, but it was an overwhelming process.
So you got all that info in your first meeting?
She was ready to go. Yeah, she was ready to go.
I spoke at the CF Care Center down there a couple times, so like the team is amazing, so I'm glad you're there. But wow, that's a lot of info to digest. What would you like to see differently for an adult diagnosis, right? What could a doctor or care team kind of do maybe a little better to deliver that information? Because it really is. I mean, I don't know if you Googled before you went there and like read everything and freaked yourself out, and then you go into this and get the hard facts from the doctor. Like, what could make it easier for a late in life diagnosis, you think?
That's a great question. I'm still an amateur in the CF world. I know that like medical terminology is so overwhelming in and of itself. I know that when you're getting connected with your whole CF care team, there's about 6 or 7 different people in there, either at a time or back to back. While I think that is great that they are just so gung-ho and ready to care for you, I think that maybe them understanding like this is so brand new, give me some time to process.
Yeah.
I just think that it's important to consider all of the feelings involved. It's so multifaceted and like your emotions that you're running through, but maybe just taking a step back and realizing like, okay, let's go back and revisit like how to eat an elephant. Like, let's do one thing at a time. Let's maybe not, just deep dive right in. That's
so smart and so important. I mean, I think that's where in medicine, and especially in like chronic illness and CF, the doctors are ready and they have the information and the studies to back it up and the experience, but there's nothing like the patient experience, right? So it is important that they kind of have a glimpse into how we're feeling, right?
Yeah.
So I've experienced that they're just like, oh yeah, IV antibiotics, 2-3 weeks in the hospital, you'll be fine. And it's like, you've never done this, so you don't really understand how I have to change my entire life around to make this happen.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine how you felt and how overwhelming it was. So I would like that information to get out there to CF care teams and providers, because that's good information. Holy cow. I want to know more about how you felt and your family felt with that initial diagnosis. And then I also want to know like what treatments you were started on right away and kind of how those went and how that changed your life. When I first got my confirmation of this is exactly what it is, one of the first things that I did was sign up for therapy, because I knew that this was a beast that I could not handle mentally alone. So I was at first, honestly, completely defeated. Like I said, reading Google was the worst thing I could possibly have done for myself. And seeing the picture of my neighbor and what she looked like, I was like, is this gonna be me? Kind of just considering, my relationship with my boyfriend at the time, now fiance Trent. I told him, this is your out, like you can go. I was just so like rock bottom as rock bottom could get, but my family really, and Trent of course, and my friends really prevailed and persisted through that, and I needed that at the time. So I think overcoming that deep down dark state that I was in, with the help of them, with the help of therapy, and with the mindset of your life is not over, this is just a setback.
I think that was so important to do. Like, I took the time to sit in it. I took the time to be sad, which I feel like is so normal and so fair for somebody who goes through a diagnosis like this. Take the time to just be and to zen and to process, but after that, like, get back up and go at it. I think my family had to do the same thing, to be honest, but maybe on their own terms. I think there was probably like some guilt from my parents of like, I caused this, which is something that they just didn't know and couldn't control. And there were some things of like, from my fiance Trent trying to deal with it. I saw like on his computer one day, like how to support somebody with CF. And I was like, man, he's really the one. I know he's going the extra mile to just be there. And I needed that, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, we're Team Trent.
Yeah, we are. We need t-shirts.
Because really, like, your life, we can't say it didn't change. It did change because you have now a solid diagnosis to the feelings and symptoms you've been having. And you might have treatments now, but your life is still, you know, you're still Skyler, active, soccer, which is awesome, right? You just finally have a name to what you've been dealing with, which, was it a huge relief?
It was, yeah. It was one of those bittersweet things, because like you said, like, my life did change. I had to mourn like the loss of who I thought I was gonna be, but then really push through and like reintroduce myself to me, if that makes sense in a way. Like, I am a whole new person because of this, because I have a name. Everything was full circle at that moment. Like, oh my gosh, the cough. I didn't really have asthma, or maybe I did, I don't know. But asthma was not the main thing. Allergies was not the main thing. No wonder I was feeling this way. And then after I had that revision surgery and started like the CF modulator medication back like a month apart, it was a whole new, I was like, I never knew I was supposed to breathe like this. So it was just a whole new start, a fresh start, I felt like.
With you, it's so interesting because we've always been, since the introduction of the first modulator, like, yes, if you get a baby who's newly diagnosed with CF and you give them a modulator, and now we're even thinking in utero, giving the parent the modulator so it translates to the kid, they won't have these respiratory symptoms and cough and lung infections. But for you, like, was your first medication literally a modulator for CF?
My first CF medication, if you don't include an inhaler or nose spray, was the modulator. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Wow. And that was only 3 years ago. Like, that's, or 2, I don't even know, I'm not good at math, but that's crazy.
Not even. It was November of 2022. So year and a half-ish.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, that's where we are in CF. I mean, that's how far we've come since, you know, I was diagnosed, my buddy Jerry was diagnosed 67 years ago or whatever. Like, that is crazy. And how did you feel after starting that modulator? Your body and symptoms and...
I was really scared to start it because I knew that, you know, this was gonna... I read the side effects. Man, I really should just stay off of Google, but read the side effects and was really, really scared to see like what was gonna happen, and didn't know if it was gonna work for me, and you know, what kind of things that I would be experiencing. I really like took time to just like process it. I got the package of the medication and I didn't start it for like a week after. Like, I just had to like look at it and think about it and pray about it and just reevaluate like if this was something that was gonna be for me and gonna change my life like everybody said that it did. I think about a week after I took it, I was like, man, oh man, like, why did I wait that week? Could have been breathing easy a week earlier, but I'm glad that I took time to process. And I do think that having my surgery like in October 2022 and then starting the medication in November of 2022 was really beneficial.
How did you introduce CF to your friend circle and even work? Like, talk us through that.
So I have like a couple of best friends that live far away, so I texted them and said like, hey, this is what I'm getting tested for. I'm just keeping you in the loop. It kind of just took time for myself, but kept them in the loop from a distance. And then my other set of friends casually told them on the way as we were driving to Chicago to see Harry Styles. So it's like, hey, you should probably bring this up, but don't want to ruin the vibes. But need to talk to you about like, this is what I have, this is what it is. I think my friends were just so supportive and were so glad that I had answers, because the ones that I grew up with in class knew about my cough because they were sitting next to me. I just appreciate them so much, such quality people that I have in my life who like love me unconditionally and are just glad that I have answers and have like some relief.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like your friends who heard you cough for so long.
Yeah.
Finally like, oh, all right, so let's get into what you're up to now. Like what? I think we were introduced to you via our Kicks Back program.
Yeah, that was like right when I had my diagnosis, and I was like trying to reach out to resources around me and resources virtually, just looking for connections and like a community, because it's so easy to feel alone in this, especially when we're told to stay away from each other. So I was reaching for anything, grasping for anything, and I really am so grateful that I found your foundation. I think it was just good timing.
Yeah, and how has that gone, immersing yourself in the community? And I will say, at a time where the CF community, we're still very active and communicate, but it's a little bit different now since the latest modulator came out, where people are feeling great and they're like, maybe feeling like, I don't want to say they don't need the community as much and rely on them, but you're kind of joining the community as the community is really changing because of the newest modulator. So how has that been?
Your foundation allowing me to run that 5K. I did the Flying Pig 5K with the Kicks Back program. That was so fun and so rewarding. Just knowing that there are other people with my exact issue dealing with this type of thing has been really helpful. And there are older people than me dealing with this issue.
Yeah.
There was a lady who, I think she was like 68 and just got diagnosed. And I was like, man, that gives me a lot of hope. And she's living her best life too. Why can't I?
Yeah. How's your exercise going now?
Going great. Currently not training for anything. I just think that like wedding planning has been taking a toll. I have been doing Orange Theory with another CF grant. So I feel really blessed, and it feels good just like feeling strong. And that's just something that I haven't felt in a while, if at all, maybe in soccer, but even then wasn't lifting weights, like was more so just like conditioning, endurance. And so now to be able to like actually lift some weights, they're light weights, but they're weights nonetheless.
Oh yeah.
Feeling.
Oh yeah, I'm doing 10-pound curls, baby.
Yep.
Really get ripped. I'm getting old. I gotta be able to lift my groceries.
That's about it. Like my milk in one hand, orange juice in the other. Yeah, that's what I'm dealing with now. But just being able to feel strong feels so good. And so having that opportunity is so great. And then when I'm not doing Orange Theory, playing pickleball with Trent, or walking along the river walk that we like to do, or even just like a light jog here and there is nice.
That's so cool. I mean, you really have done a great job getting involved in the community and then using these grants that we've all created, and you're utilizing them, and you're like feeling stronger and better than ever. Like that's amazing, right? Like that's just so cool, and it shows you how much all of our smaller nonprofit organizations and what we provide to the community really makes an impact. So you're planning a wedding?
Yes.
Like, what are we doing? When is the wedding? How big is it? What are we doing?
So excited. I'm so stoked. We quickly realized that we are not big wedding people. Just like the whole blowout shindig was just not something that we could ever see ourselves doing. So we're actually going to Sequoia National Park with our parents and siblings, and then coming back to Kentucky and having a reception with like family and friends that way, just to be able to celebrate with everyone.
What a good way to do it. I love that. You're just having a heck of a time right now.
I have a whole life ahead of me. My lung function is great. I feel healthy, I feel strong. There's medication, there are resources, there's a whole community out there. Like I'm not going through this by myself. I don't think it's gonna be CF that slows me down or makes me come to a stop. Like I think it'll be probably something else later in the future, sure, but it's not gonna be this, and it's not gonna be anytime soon. You don't have to be alone through this whole process. There are resources for you, and there's a whole community waiting for you to like help you out. And I just think that is so important to know, that in a time where you can feel super alone, you don't have to be alone.